Hello, welcome to the Step Stories podcast. I'm your host, Robin Breuner, and I've got a fun guest with me today named Laura House. Hi, Laura.
Hi, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm good. Thank you for being here. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, totally. Me too.
Laura is a writer and a stand-up comedian who's performed all around the world. She's also a writing instructor who helps people find their stories, add humor, and share them on stage, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've done stand-up for a long time, TV writer for a long, long time, and I'm working in LA at the Crow Comedy Club and then also online and help people develop stories if they want to tell them on things like The Moth, or I've helped people with TEDx talks and I just think everybody has a story to get out, which is of course what you talk about on your show too.
Absolutely. So I was going to say that your bio says that you started writing a book. That's how you got your start, called How to Be a Nerd, when you were 13 and you never finished it, but you became a writer doing some really cool things. So, yeah, I want to talk about that because I get excited about anything writing, particularly in the show business area, because I feel like I sort of miss my calling, and I love anybody who's working in that business and can talk about it. They're usually the most interesting people in the room, and as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, I mean, I just always wrote and I still write, and I was sort of discouraged from I was boldly discouraged from pursuing it as a career because my parents are very practical, security focused, reasonable people. My mom was a teacher. My dad worked at City Hall, and they were like, comedy makes no sense to us. Please consider not doing that. And there's nothing I love more than comedy and writing. And so I sort of can't help it. Like, even when I'm not doing it, I'm doing it. Even when I'm not doing it professionally, I'm doing it. And it's been and then TV writing is incredible. I mean, for words to come out of my mouth and then they go into a script and then they come out of Allison Janney's mouth. I mean, that is quite a feeling. That's amazing.
Cool.
Yeah.
That is so cool. I love that. Well, what are some of the shows you've written for?
Well, the biggest one I just referenced is the show Mom on CBS with Allison Janney and Anna Faris. And that's the one that's the most recognizable. But I've written on the George Lopez show and a show called Samantha Who with Christina Applegate, and then a lot of Nickelodeon shows, and I've sold 7 or 8 shows. And I started, like everyone, I was a 7th grade teacher. And then I did stand up at night, and then I was on an MTV show. So that's how my career started. Very run of the mill, happens to everyone. And of course, I'm kidding. It's so weird, but that is what happened. And so I came to LA, and then I was pursuing acting and performing, and then I fell into writing, and I really like it. And it's taken me to England and Belfast, and I've show-run shows, and a show won a BAFTA, and some have won Emmys, and I'm Emmy nominated, and yeah, it's been nice.
You.
I'm not sure how to wrap it up.
You could keep going as far as I'm concerned, but so did you start by practicing in front of 7th graders? That would be a tough crowd. That's like the toughest crowd you could get.
Yeah, they're kind of my vibe because they're little kids, kind of don't know any better, and then high school kids know better, and then 7th grade is just like they're just out of their minds. And I was like, I totally get that.
What are some of the shows you've acted in?
I haven't acted in a ton of, that was commercials. There's a movie with Natalie Portman called Where the Heart Is that I'm in the very beginning. And then not a ton of acting credits, to be honest. Mostly writing stuff.
The writing. Well, we have you here today because you have a step story, and you have an even more interesting. I shouldn't put it this way, but blended family story. So we're going to talk about both.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about your step story, because you are a stepmother now. And how did that come about?
Well, I fell in love with a dude who has some kids, and I guess that's the most common way for that to happen. And I don't have kids of my own. Also, oddly, my brother did the same thing. I guess we're just lazy. We're like, you have the kids. We'll come in later. We'll do cleanup. Is that what they say in baseball? And
Yeah.
so these kids, when we got together, were 18, 19, something like that. So to me, they were grown. They were people. It wasn't like I was changing diapers or driving them to school, but I still wanted to have a good, healthy relationship with them, obviously. And I'm not someone who, I don't really insert myself assertively, like some people, like I don't want to name names. Someone in my family married someone else who came in, and I used to joke that she was like the mayor of our family. Like, she came in, here's what we're doing at Christmas, and now we're doing this, and now that was the one thing I knew I didn't want to be with
Yeah.
these kids. So I just always approached them kind of the way I would get to know anyone, anywhere, or at a party, or a friend's friend, of like, we will form our own relationship, and that will take time, and you get to not like me initially or feel however you want to feel, and I'm just here to be a safe space.
Did you use your comedy to endear yourself to them, do you think? Did they get you?
Well, it's an interesting, I see how that would, it's a good question, because I see how that would occur but the idea of using stage comedy in real life does not go well. The idea that I would use my comedy. I mean, I would say, like, because I'm a comedian, inherently, I'm perhaps a humorous person just naturally. So I certainly try to, just as I talk to people, it often comes out. But no, I would not say I was like, oh, I'll make her laugh. Like, nothing to me, there couldn't be a bigger disaster than like, I'm going to make her laugh and like me. Like, it would be so trying too hard. And
Yeah.
I feel like people, it ends up being inauthentic,
Yeah.
like, I'm doing bits on you, and why don't you I mean, I feel like the only takeaway from that would be like, why didn't she like me? I worked so hard to make her laugh.
Right. It's a job. And you're making me think about this. One of my very close friends was a stand-up comedian, and then he ended up having like a one-man show on Broadway, but he's pretty quiet in everyday life. And he'll throw out a zinger here and there, but it seems like I've heard that a lot of comedians are actually kind of inherently a little bit shy when they're not on the stage. So do you think that's true? I'm just curious.
I don't think it's true. I think it's like some are, some aren't. I just think comedians are run the gamut of humanity. So, I don't think there's like an ironic thing, like they're all secretly sad inside, but some are, or they're all shy, but some are. I mean, some are very gregarious, and some have anxiety, or, some are crazy drunk. Some are much louder in real life than they are on stage. Like I think it's the whole gamut of ways people can be.
Yeah.
But I do, and it also depends on where you are in your life. As a younger comedian, I definitely tried to use my comedy on people, and that's how I know it does not go well.
Well, okay. Well, I was thinking as well, coming in with an 18 and a 19-year-old could be really tough. And I guess it's great you were a seventh grade teacher, because even though that's younger, I do know that around that age, people think, oh yeah, they're adults, they're off to college or they're off to do whatever they're going to do, but you're not really an adult at that age. You're still a teenager, and I think you could be very judgmental, protective of your parent. And how was your experience? How did you handle that, or did you not experience that?
No, there was some of that. I mean, they were protective of their mother, I think, in different ways. So there's a son and a daughter. And I think and my guy's name is Brian. I think Brian's daughter was more like, she's older, and I think she was more like, Dad has a girlfriend. I think that's good, and I'll get to know her. And I don't think she had. We're very different, and I don't get the feeling that she wanted her dad to be happy, but I don't think she was like particularly, I'm going to make sure I like this person, or particularly I'm going to make sure I drive her out of his life, or anything. I think she was just like, I kind of don't care, like it's kind of my dad's business who he's with, but I'll meet her. And then, we got to know each other as we got to know each other. Really in our own way. And then the son was a little more like, I don't like this, and had more difficult or maybe resentful feelings, about the situation and about his dad. Honestly, it didn't have anything to do with me. I'm just someone with his dad. So we just gave him space. And it was something Brian said to me too when we first got together. He was like, there's some baggage here and some issues here. And I love my kids, and I'm, giving time for them to work some things out, which I guess I sort of took Brian's lead in a way. But the main thing for me, sorry, the main thing for me has nothing to do with teaching or comedy. It has to do with what I thought of adults when I was a kid. And my mom was a teacher where I went to school, and I have so much experience with adults who I don't really know and I don't really have a relationship with. Like, yes, I know this is Miss Williams or Miss Fuller or whatever, but literally in my face asking about the math test or how I'm feeling, or, like my mom would have had a private conversation with them, which is appropriate. They're her friends, but then they would like insert themselves and get in my face about, I know you can do better on those math tests or whatever. And I was like, you know what? Like, no, I don't know you like that. Like, so I genuinely, it's sort of a life goal to never be that weird adult to a kid.
Yeah. Well, you used the word safe adult with me when we talked recently, and you said you wanted to be that for these kids, these stepkids. And maybe I really loved that term, and I'd love for you to kind of expand on what that is to you.
Well, so his daughter's name is Casey, and she, again, initially it's like, hi, nice to meet you. And I think that's what's appropriate. And we actually met with our dogs in the park. And so we could talk about dogs, which we all love. And, maybe we had some meals together. But I wanted to be like, if you're in jail, you can call me. If you're hurting, you can call me. If you need $20, you can call me. If you need a ride somewhere 3 a.m, call me. I'm not here to boss you, shame you. I'm not that adult that's going to be like, you should be doing this or that, or what, whatever. To me, safe adult means I'm supportive. I'm not nosy. I'm not controlling you. I'm not making sure you understand my feelings about your life choices that I don't like, it's just like, when she's with a boyfriend, I'm like, great, good for you. When they break up, I'm like, how can I help? What do you need? To do laundry here, stay here, our home is yours. What do you need?
So you came in more of an attitude of I'm not here to be another mother figure. I'm here to kind of be a friend to you. I'm safe. You can confide in me. You can talk to me. And it sounds like that worked really well.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it just, I wouldn't know what else to do. They have a mother.
Mm-hmm.
It would be, to me, it's weird. I mean, I do understand. Also, we didn't live with them, and that would be different. I think if they're down the hall from me and I pay mortgage, I would have a few things to say about behaviors, or whatever, like, no, don't get drunk and pass out on the lawn. I live here, there would be rules, but
Yeah.
I do, or whatever someone might do. But that also wasn't our situation. So I just felt like, there seemed to be no other, I can't imagine what else I would want for them than to just be
Yeah.
a positive human in their life,
Yeah. And so how many years has it been now? I mean, how are things with you now?
10 basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
And
things are great, and now we've lived some life together, now they know me. You don't know anybody for, like, the MTV's The Real World. You don't know anybody at first, now we've
yeah.
all been real, and they're, you know Brian's son has had a child, so kind of I'm a grandma, which is weird. I mean, I really skipped a step to be a grandma. And, um, Casey's had various relationships, and she's in a great one now and a job she loves. We got to see her graduate from college, and, and that's actually where I met their mother for the first time, at this graduation. And that was really
Mhm.
lovely. And, just to be like, hey, we all literally just want the best for this lady, this this graduating lady. And it was beautiful. And what was the other thing I wanted to say? Oh, yes, this is big. So a couple of years ago, Brian had an emergency triple bypass.
Oh.
And that is super scary. It's a hereditary thing. His dad suddenly died of, they call it the widowmaker, that kind of
Mhm.
heart stopping situation. And apparently that was about to happen to him. He went in for an angiogram, and they were like, we're getting him to surgery right now. We're prepping him for
Wow.
surgery. So, this is a real stepmom moment. I called the kid. Like, I don't call the kids. Like, if you get a call from me, that's probably scary. Like, we don't just chat, casually.
Mhm.
So, for me to call the kids, and your dad's in the hospital, and frankly, triple bypass, I know they're sort of common, but it's a very big deal when you have one. And I don't know if he's walking out of that. I don't know if we're going to get him back,
Yeah.
and that was really an experience to share with those kids, because it was suddenly, wow, what if we lost Brian? I mean, we had to consider, what if we lost Brian?
Hmm. So you bonded and that's a thing, right? People bond over shared trauma.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry that it took something like that for you to have to bond in that way, but it sounds like he's okay. Got through it.
Yeah, no, he's great, definitely. And, yeah, not even that it took that, it's just that was a life event that
Yeah.
led to, an even deeper connection, I suppose I would say.
And you handled it really well. And yes, well, I commend you for how you've handled those stepkids. And, hopefully people listening to this podcast will take a little bit of something away from how you handled that. Because sometimes I was thinking about when you were talking about somebody in the family that came in and acted like the mayor.
I'm
That
here
was
now,
my
you're
experience a
welcome.
bit.
Oh,
Yeah,
what?
exactly. Well, I had a, yeah,
That was your
new
situation, kind of?
second stepmother. Yes, around the same age as those kids. And, we used to joke that she thought she was the new sheriff in town because,
Yeah.
suddenly we went from one mother to another stepmother to this stepmother. And, meanwhile, we're all still doing the thing and they're kind of coming in like, nope, I'm in charge now. And so I really appreciate hearing how you handled it. But I want to skip ahead a little bit.
That's nice to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. I want to skip ahead because I think a big part of your story actually goes back to your childhood and the fact that you were adopted as a baby. And we talked about the fact that adoptions are another form of blended families, of course. And certainly it depends on when somebody was adopted. I know as a baby, when you come in, it's just your family. It's not a blended family, but you have more to that story. And one of the things that you talked about is your brother, Matt, who was also adopted, and he had an influence too on how you saw yourself acting as a stepmother because of the way he acted as a role model for his stepkids. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, my brother Matt is a good man. We were super sibling rivalry. Like, we were not friends as kids. He was mean. He was my mean big brother. He was he has lovely qualities, but it was not great. We're very, very different. But as adults, we're friends, and I really admire him. And he married someone with kids, and they were in high school or junior high school. So they were younger. They lived with them. He was, and my brother is also very smart, very smart. He's an internet security architect. Anyway, he's incredibly smart, but the negative side of that he can be a little controlling because he often does have the best idea. And that's, can be like, well, if I hear a better idea, we can do, which can feel a little like, wow. But not easygoing. But he didn't do that with those boys. And he might have even said to me, I just wanted to be a positive man for them. I think their actual dad was not really a good dad, was a kind of a make fun of you if you don't like the kind of stuff he likes. You're not in sports and you're a boy and, he's going to make fun of you. Is that kind of dad, I think. And I don't know that much about it because Matt is a really good guy. He doesn't even badmouth people. So I don't have all the facts, but he was such a stalwart rock for these boys. They both ended up going to the college my brother had gone to, which was from another state from where they were born. But they both went to his college. They both stayed in touch. The marriage did not work out, but those boys were both at my brother's second wedding. They're in his life. They're my nephews. And it's gorgeous. They're like, they don't call him dad. They're like, he's Matt. He's our guy. Like, it's just beautiful. So I think that was my role model of just be Laura. Just be, hey, we can count on Laura. Even if there's something I don't think I can tell anyone, I think I can tell Laura. That's who I want to be for these kids. And also to not impose that, just to let them know and then not be like, so tell me stuff, because people, that can be weird too, of like, I wish you'd just tell me things. It's going to be fine. It's like, don't be weird in that way.
You can't force
either.
it.
Yeah, you can't force anything, I think.
You can't force authenticity. It has to be earned, right?
That is totally it, Robin. Yeah, yes, 100%. I can't make you like me or want anything or be anything that you're not already right this moment. But just what I can do, and I think look, I'm 19 years sober, so I don't come by this naturally. Like different story. If this was like 23 years ago and I'm a stepmom, I'm sure it would not have been as smooth. But I have learned I don't have to tell you what to do. And I don't have to, like we were talking about storytelling and writing. You know what I can do? I can tell you my story. I can tell you where I'm coming from, and I can just give that to you. And I feel like that's what I did. Like, Casey, I love your dad and I love you. And I'm here for you. And then let her take that however she wants,
Mm-hmm. Well,
And I
think
feel like that's what I did.
You sound like a very, very secure within yourself and just very self-aware. So I think those are good messages. And I want to kind of circle back to your brother and you, because it sounds like your parents were great role models for you. I mean, you kind of talked about they were a teacher and
I forgot what you said your dad people.
Did. Very stable.
Very stable people.
So I want to talk about your adoption story. And I love the story you were telling me the other day, that you knew you were adopted, but you thought everybody was adopted until you saw your neighbor. So will you tell that story? Because I loved it.
I will. It is delightful. So yeah, so as a kid, my brother and I are both adopted, and it was never walking on eggshells. It was never said with a whisper. It was, some people don't find out till they're 25 or 40 or whatever, but we were, it was like, yeah, you're adopted. And so I understood, babies come out of ladies, and my mom couldn't make babies. And so we came from some other lady, but these are our parents, like that was normal. And I associated it with like the store. I want a candy bar. I go to the store. I don't grow cacao. Somebody made that. And when you go to the store to get it, like we all eat salad, but I'm not a farmer. So I just was like, oh, food, stereos, cars, babies. Like you just go get them somewhere. And so I assumed it was very common. And that there must just be some ladies out there having all the babies for everybody, like Handmaid's Tale, which I didn't, which is like the dystopian version of that idea. And we're down the street. I was like 10 years old, and we're down the street. Our neighbor, Barbara, had been pregnant. So I understood she was making a baby. And I just had in my head, like, oh, that must be her job. My mom's a teacher. She must be one of those baby having ladies. And then I saw her a few months later, and she had a baby on her boob, and I was flummoxed. I was like, how can you keep him? Like, how? like that's some lady's baby. You're like, why do you still have him? And she was like, pardon? And I was like, what is he doing? Why is he like eating her? Like what? And she was like, I'm feeding him, and I think you need to go talk to your mother. And my mom kind of explained where babies come from, but also, which I did understand, but also that's when I learned, oh, very few people are adopted. Like it turns out 2% of the population is adopted. So it was like, oh, basically just me and my brother. Oh, then I needed to know, who's this lady I came out of? Like, I'm very inquisitive, I guess, because I was like, okay, there's just some lady walking around, and I am half her. I was in her, and is she a teacher at my school? Does she live down the street? Have I run into her at the groceries? Like, I was like, am I watching her? Is she in Smokey and the Bandit? Is it Sally Field? Who is it? Like, I couldn't. So I was like, I got to find out who this is. And my brother, who's also adopted, has never wondered one time. To me, it's the beginning of the sentence. I'm adopted. Therefore, I need to know the rest of the story. And to my brother, it's the end of the story. No, whatever. I'm adopted, period. That's where it ends.
Mm.
And I'm like, that's how different we are. Like, he's like, logic, what's the answer? And I'm like, I must explore all
Emotional, creative.
possibilities.
Yes.
I am.
Well, that is what led you to be a writer.
It
But okay,
really
so when you were
is.
18, you tried to find your birth mother and found out the records were sealed. And tell me, was that when you found out that like your mother blocked you, or I forgot the story?
Yeah, it's gradual interest. So when I was young and I would bring up adoption, it hurt my mother's feelings. And, my mom, who, my Carol House, who raised me. And I could tell because she was so clear. I would have babies if I could. I just wanted a bunch of babies. I couldn't love you more if you came out of me. Like, you're my daughter. We even look alike. We would be told, and our whole family, we look alike. She didn't want me to feel adopted, and I think she didn't want to feel, like I was. She was like, "You're my daughter. There's that the end." And so I waited till I was 18, where I could get records myself. And I said, is it okay? I actually said to my mom, I'm 18 now and I don't want to hurt your feelings, but I'm curious about my birth mother of just information. And she goes, "Oh, hang on, I'll be right back." And I was like, "Is she here? What is?" And my mom left the room and came back a few minutes later, and she had a file, and it was just some bit like a one-pager info, paternal, both parents and the maternal grandparents, just a little eye color, weight, height, and I was like, "You've just had this?" And she was like, "Yeah, it was just if you were curious, if you wanted to ask." And I was like, wow. So that's the first thing I had. And then a little later, I sent off for the redacted file. So it's my birth file that everyone has one, I guess. Or I guess mine, maybe not, because some of mine, it was official adoption papers and stuff, but redacted anything with the doctor's name or something that you could look up. And I got more information about them. And there were interviews with the birth mother, saying, "I think this is a special baby." And, it was in the social worker's handwriting, and it was very sweet. Um, and the next thing would be to do the big push, where it's like a slight extra fee, but you say, "Go find her." But what you could do with this one move was I put a letter in the adoption registry. So that means I wrote her a letter, and they said, "You put it in the adoption registry. And then if she also puts in a letter, then you're connected, because it means you both want to meet each other."
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, they're very protective of keeping you separate, because that was the agreement, because I was born in 1970. And so I did write a letter, and I didn't hear anything. So for years, I was like, well, she's not interested. And then later, some years later, my 30s or so, I did the big push and was like, "Let's find her." And then they said, "We found her, but she didn't respond. So we have to call off the search. So you can't meet her." So I was convinced, oh, she really doesn't want to be found. And I stopped. I was like, oh, I'll just never be able to meet my birth mother, I guess.
How did that make you feel?
I was devastated.
Mm.
Like, I was 40, let's say I was 40. And at this time I was sober and I kind of had my life together. And I was like, oh, this is, I'm finally ready. It's a big emotional thing to pursue. And I was like, I'm finally ready. And I'd wanted to do this for, since I was 10. And then it was like, oh, and also my biggest fear is that rejection, like I was probably the worst day of her life, I thought. And like I was probably the hardest thing she ever wanted to do. And maybe she just doesn't want to think about this. And I didn't want to bother her. Like, I didn't want anything from her. I mean, you want a picture. I mean, you just literally want to go like Do you have my nose, my eye?
Of course.
I had never encountered anyone I shared DNA with. And my best friend growing up was a twin. And I was always like, I marveled at genetics as a very young child because I was like, you were in a womb, a person you shared a womb with.
Yeah.
And I was like, I have zero connection to any DNA, anything. And then, as you know, 23andMe came along.
Yeah. Yes.
It changed a lot of people's stories, I think.
Yes. I've heard this a lot. Not always for the best, that's for sure. But
not always for the best. And genetics are not everything, It's not, it doesn't mean there's a happy ending.
Well, for you met a half brother, right?
Yes. So I went on to, my friend told me about 23andMe and she was like, no, it's neat. You find out how much Norwegian you are. And I was like, well, I want to know that, but I also kind of want to trick my birth mother into meeting me. Like, I was like, maybe she's on there, maybe someone else. And not that I was catfishing my birth mother, but kind of in a way I was like, I really want someone in that. I was like, someone in that family is going to be on here. And I got on and Robin, nothing. 4 years or so, like a long time, nothing. And I was like,
really?
Okay, nothing. I mean, 6 cousins, but we're all 6 cousins. So it was just useless. And every now and then somebody reached out to me and was like, oh, are you in the this and that? I was like, I don't know, sir. And then one day, I was about 50. So this has been a 4-decade
10
journey.
years? Oh, wow.
I was about 50 and I got a ping, which it didn't mean that much to me on Twin because you're like, oh, it's a 6th cousin. But this message said, hey, it looks like I'm your half brother. And I never expected that. I had not even thought about that, really. I thought of like aunts or uncles, or I really had not thought of siblings, I don't think. And I couldn't believe it. And Jeremy and I got along great. Like we messaged and then we were texting and he's funny and we were kidding around and we both, he's like, I've known about you since I was in high school and I always wondered what it would be like to have a sister. And we're being silly in texts. And after about a week, he said, hey, I have something for you. And he gave me a phone number and it was my birth mother's phone number.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what happened?
He was sort of vetting me. I called her and left a message. After all that, I mean, it was so emotional, but like, I was like, I'm calling my birth mother. And then it's kind of funny too, to have this experience of this woman I've wondered about and had all kinds of ideas about it, fantasies and fears and curiosity for my whole life is just his mom. You know what I mean? Like, she's just a lady. She's just his mom. She just goes to work and, makes him sandwiches. Like she's just a person. And, but I was like, wow. So, but we ended up talking. I met her. I met them all. Her mother was alive at the time. So I met my 100-year-old grandmother, who she instigated us all meeting. She called me. So my birth mother can be a little shy. And her mother called and she said, look, I'm 100 years old. I don't wait for things. My daughter can be a little bit shy. She said, but she said, I met you one time and I held you and I kissed you and I just prayed that you'd have a good life. And it sounds like you have. And every year I pray for you on your birthday. It was incredible. And we were on a cell phone in different states. And I just thought, think of everything that had to come into existence for this phone call to take
Wow.
place. Like cell phone, internet, adoption, me looking, reasonably priced DNA testing. You know what I mean? Like literally all of that had to happen for this call to take place. And it changed my life story, because where I had thought my whole life, like I was rejected, I was a problem, I was a burden, they were all like, wow, the baby's back. It's the
And
baby. I'm 50. They're like, the baby's here.
well, you must have had so many mixed emotions. I mean, I'm feeling the emotions just listening to your story, because adoption, it's such a mixed bag, right? It's so wonderful for a family to be able to adopt a baby or a child, and it's wonderful for the child. It's wonderful all the way around if it's good. But at the same time, you're meeting your 100-year-old grandma that, for 50 years you didn't know, who might not have much time left. And so you didn't have all those years with these people. So I'm just curious. Obviously, every situation is different, but that must have been so confusing for you.
Well, it wasn't, I guess it was confusing for a minute. I mean, the grandmother was Bama, Ruth. She was such a bonus. It would never occur to me that I wasn't thinking grandmothers. I'm not even really that curious about my biological father. I was just like, I lived in a lady, like I at least want to see a picture. I was so curious about that and her. And what was confusing, so Bama called and she said, this was kind of wild. So I connected with Jeremy in like July of, I forget the year, but anyway, it was like July. And I was doing comedy in different states coming up. So I actually had a show coming up in August in Florida, and in October in Indianapolis. And Brian and I had tickets to go visit my father in Texas in September. And Bama called up and she said, I want to meet you and your fiance. I'll send you plane tickets, and I really want to meet you. And I was like, well, we're already coming to Texas in September. We'll drive down. And so we set that for September. Jeremy lives in where I had a show in August. And I said to him, I said, look, we don't really know each other, but I'm going to be in your state in like 6 weeks. Do you want to meet? And he was like, we're there. And then I have another half brother. So I have two half brothers, which is nice. It makes one whole brother. And he lives in the state where I was performing in October. So I had no contact with any of this family. And then I met them all in a 3-month period. And then I think we went back at Christmas and spent some time with them. And I've gone and visited Jeremy for a week where he lives. And I'm in contact with my birth mother. She's lovely. And yeah, it's incredible. But yeah, what was confusing at first was I went there and we just laughed and laughed. Like when I first met, it was nonstop laughing. Even when I met my birth mother. Okay, this is what happened. Very first meeting. We haven't seen each other for 50 years, I guess. And we hug each other and she kind of rocks me back and forth. She's very tender and she's very emotional and she's holding me. And then she took a step back and she looked at me and she said, "You've grown." And
she's a comedian too.
She is. And they were all like, "You're a comedian. Of course you're a comedian. All we do is laugh and make fun of things." And it was so honestly, it was so me. This family,
Yeah.
it was very
Yeah.
comfortable, and they're irreverent and silly and funny, and they go with a bit. And my family is not. My family, like I told you, they were like, please don't go into comedy. We can't imagine a worse path, to make a career. And they're not wrong, there's lean times, but so that was confusing. That part was
Mm.
confusing. But only for a couple of days. Like, we went and saw my dad. We drove down. We saw this family for a day or two, and I came back home and spent time with my dad. And so I was with them, and it was loud and raucous. And I was like, oh, what if I had grown up like this? Would I be different? Would I have had more self-acceptance, or would I have been more nurtured in creatively, or whatever? And then I went back home, and just it's silent. Not a lot
Mm.
of kidding around. I mean, they're not mad people. They're just not vocal like that, And
Mm-hmm.
I was like, and then I was like, so the confusion was, which one am I? And it took me a couple of days to integrate. I was like, you're 100% both.
Right.
I'm
You're
both.
a blend.
I'm absolutely both. I mean, and absolutely nature and nurture. And
Mm-hmm.
every person is. But
Mm-hmm.
also, I really felt it viscerally, maybe in a way that a lot of
Yeah.
people won't experience of, I am all these, I am goofy and silly and creative and laughing, and I'm practical, and I like stability, and and not that the other, you know what I mean? It's not that my biological family doesn't like stability. I'm just saying I am both I am both of these families.
I understand what you're saying. Totally. Um, and I'm just curious, bringing this whole thing back full circle, because you met your bio family around the same time you got married, it sounds like,
Yes,
and
Brian
became
and
a
I had been
stepmother.
together. Yeah, Brian and I had been together a couple of years.
So, just do you feel like sort of your experience with all of this impacted you again? The way you looked at marriage, coming in as a stepmother, having not been a parent. Do you think any of that influenced you?
Wow, I that is a great question. I had not thought of that exactly, but I'm sure it did. I mean, I was just so sort of fundamentally changed by meeting my biological family, to be honest. I mean, it was the question of my life.
Right.
And so I kind of don't have another question, I've found. I really
Hmm.
just kind of don't. And that's an interesting, it's weird. It's like when the hiccups go away, you're like, oh, there's just nothing more to wonder about of who I am. Like, I'm aware of it all. But
Maybe working through,
mhm.
well, I was just going to say, maybe working through that major thing, uh, becoming a step parent for you wasn't, it was just kind of, okay, I'm here. Um, but this isn't like the giant part of my world, because I've just had the giant part of my world. I'm just wondering.
Oh, I see. Well, I mean, yeah, the step parent thing was already in place because Brian and I had already, we were living together and had been together. So I had that. But the step family thing, again, because we didn't all live under the same roof, it wasn't a
Yeah.
giant shift. It was welcoming. It was, being in her life to a certain degree, and then welcoming these kids into, creating a life with Brian, and making sure these kids know they belong in it, and they're welcome in it. But I will say, your question made me think of my general idea about family in a way that I don't think I've ever crystallized it before, which is, so not every I'm going to take an extreme example, The Godfather. So, like, that concept of family is completely lost on me. Like when I was young and we would do like, family trees at school and they're like, oh, my grandfather invented this, or I would be like, none of this means I'm not really related to any of those people. So like nothing I learn about my family felt important to me. I mean, it seems kind of sad or mean to say in a way, but in the sense that, I mean, the truth is, of course, it would have influenced me because it would have influenced my father or his father, so obviously I was getting, if someone was very brave, perhaps that was passed down by example, or whatever. But I never cared. Or genetics, when that came up in science class, like, so for me, family in general, and I have a very small family now. It's basically just me and my brother. So it's family to me. It's just people you love. It's my friends. It's my, nothing makes more sense to me than Friendsgiving. You're with who you're with and love them. And it's, so I don't have that, like, this is family. It's where I don't really have any familial obligations, so I kind of have a looser sense of family, I think, than a lot of people.
Sounds like you're saying family's what you make it. You've created your family, and it's really kind of cool. I feel like just in this conversation, we had this whole, like, it could have been a novel shrunk down for
we went all
how
over.
this all started. Yeah, but we did really come full circle, and I really appreciate you sharing all of that.
Sure.
Because I think there's a lot of nuggets in there that people will take away, and most of all, I think it was really important that safe adult thing that you talked about, because that is just a great buzzword, to be a safe adult for any children in your life, and particularly as a step parent. So I just want to thank you for being here. And also, is there anything you want to share that's exciting that you've got coming up that you're excited about?
Oh, you know what? If for people in Los Angeles, I teach storytelling and stand up at the Crow Comedy Club, and that's on my website, laurahouse.com, or Instagram is very easy at I'm Laura House. And we also offer some Zoom classes, or I work with people one-on-one if, people are interested in storytelling, and I'm very easy to I'm very findable. So yeah, I love to connect with people.
Well, we will share all of your information in our show notes, so people will have that. So look there.
Great.
And please share the episode, and follow Step Stories Podcast wherever you get your podcast, and follow it on Instagram and Facebook as well. And follow Laura too, please, if you would. And thanks again. Thanks again for being here. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Of course. Me too. Thanks for having me.
I hope to see you again soon.
Same.
Bye, Laura.
Bye.